Welcome back to my channel. If you saw my last video, then you know instead of a temperature blanket this year, I am doing a blanket that tracks all of the romance books that I'm reading. So each subgenre of a romance book has a different color of yarn, and then for each book that I read within a certain subgenre, I am crocheting a row on my blanket. So I decided that I was going to be doing a video every month updating the progress of my blanket, what books I read, and talking about all of that. So here is that video. I will go in depth about each book that I read, what all of my thoughts on it, what I rated it while I am crocheting the rows into my blanket. But for the month of January, this is what I have so far. So there's a lot of light pink, which is our fantasy color. It's a big month for fantasy. I was rereading a lot of the Sarah J. Maas books leading up to the new Crescent City House of Flame and Shadow book that came out at the end of January. Here are all of the books that I read in January that will be featured in this video, plus this ebook. So the books in this video will be Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie, A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas, Crescent City House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, Crescent City House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, and Dungeons and Drama by Kristy Boyce. So stay tuned to hear all of my thoughts on those books and watch the progress of my blanket coming together. I just finished my first romance book of the year, so we are going to get started on our blanket. Here is my little code, and the book that I finished was Dungeons and Drama, which is a YA book. So we will be using this color right here to begin. This is our yarn. It is Red Heart Super Saver in Light Raspberry, using a 4.5mm hook, and I will be using the Stripes and Colors pattern from Crochet Objet, which I will have linked in my description down below. So my first read of 2024 was Dungeons and Drama by Kristy Boyce. This was a YA romance novel about Riley, who is a big musical theater lover, and Nathan, who is a big Dungeons and Dragons lover and player. Riley steals her mom's car to go see a musical and ends up getting in a lot of trouble from her parents, and her punishment is to work after school hours in her dad's game shop. Nathan is also an employee at this game shop. Riley finds out that her school will no longer be putting on a musical this year, and she has taken it upon herself to save the musical. But she can't do that while also working. So her and Nathan kind of make a little plan where Nathan is going to cover Riley's shifts. In return, Riley is going to flirt with Nathan, little fake dating going on, to make a girl that Nathan likes jealous. In order to do this, Riley joins Nathan and his friends' Dungeons and Dragons game, where she actually finds out that Dungeons and Dragons is not much different from acting, so she ends up really loving it. That's all I'll say to keep this spoiler-free, but it is fake dating, high school romance, YA, but still really enjoyable and a really cute and sweet read. I actually really enjoyed this book. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it that much. There was a lot of Dungeons and Dragons and musical theater references, but it was in a way that did not make it confusing at all, and you almost felt like you were a part of the games in the book. I really enjoyed how the author wrote these two high schoolers. They were very believable in the way that they acted, reacted, and talked. All of it was very on brand for high schoolers in a good way. I also really enjoyed seeing Riley's relationship with her dad throughout this book, and I actually really loved Nathan. He was a great MMC. I wasn't sure if I would like him as much, but he's honestly better than some of the MMCs in contemporary romances that I've read. I read this between a lot of the Sarah J. Maas books, so this was a great little palette cleanser. It was a really easy read. It was pretty short. I think it's either around or just under 300 pages. And I actually got to read this one early as an ARC through NetGalley. And I rated this 4.5 stars. I think it was a super cute, super easy read, and I really enjoyed it. So if you're looking for something along those lines, this book is for you. All right, I've been chaining. I don't even know. Wasn't even counting. So I'm gonna go count this, and then I'll move on to my first row when I have my full chain length. Okay, so I finished my starting chain, and I put little stitch markers at every 50 stitches so that I don't have to recount all the time. So if you watched my video explaining how I was doing this blanket, I kind of talked about how I was going to probably do around 2 rows for every like normal sized romance book, which is about 400 pages. And then if it's a bigger book like the Sarah J. Maas books, I will probably do 3+ rows. If they're shorter books, I'll do 1 row. So this book was, I think it was around 300 pages, maybe just under 300 pages. So I think I'm going to do just 1 row for this one. And then we'll see how it looks. And then I will color change and get on to my second book of 2024. While I'm doing this, I am listening to my next audiobook, which is In the Weeds by B.K. Borson. So that might come up later in this video or in a future one. Here is my first row complete from my first book. And I think I'm gonna stop at 1 row for this one. So I'll be back when I finish another book. I have completed my second book of the year, and she was a chunky one. This is Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This was a reread. I read this book when it first came out, and I am rereading the Crescent City books leading up to Crescent City 3 at the end of January. So you'll probably see Sky and Breath later in this video as well. Obviously this is a fantasy book, so we had this nice dark pink color going for YA, and now we're gonna move on to our fantasy color. Let me go grab that. All right, so again, here is our key. And for fantasy, we are going to be using this light pink color, which is right here. So this yarn is Big Twist Gentle in the color Blush, and it's slightly thicker than the other yarns I'm using. I wanted to kind of introduce some different textures into this blanket. I think it might add some extra interest even though I'm already changing colors. Anyways, so I am going to change my color and then get started on my second row. Oh, also, because this book was so thick, I'm probably going to do maybe 3 rows for this one. So I'll see, because I think one of the rows is double crochets. So if it looks thicker, maybe I'll stop after 2. But these books feel like you're reading 3 books while you're reading them. So I want to kind of track that and give myself grace for reading an 800-page book. Adding my new color. All right, now that I've gotten this started a bit, here's how it's looking with that color change, and let's talk a bit about this book. So I'm probably not going to say too much about this book because I do kind of think it's better to go into it knowing absolutely nothing. If you have read Sarah J. Maas's other books, either the ACOTAR books or the Throne of Glass books, this one is very different. But to me, I really liked that. I thought it was pretty refreshing to read after all of her other series and her other books. It's a much more modern take on fantasy in the sense that they have like phones and coffee shops, and the main character, Bryce Quinlan, lives in a city, Crescent City, which is very reminiscent of like New York. I think in an interview somewhere, Sarah J. Maas said that she was inspired to write this off of the Disney movie Zootopia. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that is an actual thing she said, which you kind of get those vibes. It's a lot of different species of magical beings coming together and living in this giant city, and I think it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. There's a mystery slash suspense kind of element to it. Bryce is trying to help solve a string of murders, so you kind of get that aspect of it as well. And I don't know, I just thought it was really fun. I know there's a lot of people that love Throne of Glass and the A Court of Thorns and Roses books that did not like Crescent City. Personally, to me, it's one of my favorite series by her, and I am very much looking forward to the third book coming out. So yeah, give it a chance if you haven't already. There is a lot of world building in the beginning because it is like a completely different magic system and different sort of fantasy realm, especially for Sarah J. Maas. So it can be kind of hard to kind of get into at the beginning, but I recommend, if you can, listen to the audiobook, because I think that really helps with the world building, and it's the same narrator from the Throne of Glass books, which I really like her. I think she does a good job of all of the different character voices and all the inflections and whatnot. So yeah, give it a chance. Especially if you liked the ACOTAR books, I really think you could really like this one. However, they are very long books. I think both Crescent City books are about 800 pages. I think Sky and Breath might be over 800 pages. And I think the new one's also around there too. So I kind of flip back and forth between audiobook and ebook for these, because holding the giant, massive book, it's like a brick. I mean, I don't know. If you have a long crochet project that you're working on, these are really great to just put on and listen to, because you kind of do get lost in the story if you're doing something kind of motionless with your hands, which kind of just goes with all audiobooks for me, but especially these ones. I've been listening to these while I'm working on a blanket from Twilight, which will be in a future video. So yeah, I did not rate this book this time around since it was a reread. However, when I first read it, I think I gave this book like a 4.25 stars, which is oddly specific, but there was still some confusion. I still wasn't entirely certain how I felt about it, but I did have a lot of fun while reading it. But as goes with the first book of any fantasy series, you're kind of just like thrown into this new world with this magic system that you aren't entirely sure how it works yet, so you kind of just are bound to get confused along the way. And I think Sarah J. Maas does a good job of answering a lot of those questions, either in the current book or in future books. And she, obviously, everyone knows she leaves a lot of Easter eggs, and there's theories like crazy on the internet everywhere. I'm not as good at picking out those theories and those little Easter eggs, but I definitely enjoy watching the dedicated SJM fans that do go through and re-annotate their books and everything like that. All right, I'm gonna finish up this row and then I'll come back and I will figure out how many more rows we will be doing for this book. Here is after 2 rows for Crescent City. So I do think I decided I am going to do a 3rd row for Crescent City. So I'm going to do that right now. Then I'll show you the progress on my blanket. All right, so here is after 3 rows for Crescent City. Here is how my blanket is looking so far. I'm very happy with this. I like the varied stitches. So yeah, here it is so far. I'll be back when I have read another book. I finished another book, so it is time to add another row to my book tracking blanket. We last left off with Fantasy, which was this light pink color, and the book that I finished this time was Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is a part of the Addicted Calloway series. It is the first book in the Calloway Sisters series, but the fourth book in the Addicted Calloway series altogether, which I do recommend you read it that way. This was contemporary romance, so going back to my little chart that I have, we are going to be using this ivory white color, which is right here. We'll get started on that, and then we are going to talk about this book. With the extra bonus content, this book is 475 pages, so I think I will be doing 2 rows for this one. Alright, so Kiss the Sky was actually another reread for me. I first read the Addicted Calloway books, I believe, mid-2022, and it was honestly like a fever dream to me. I think I read all... Is it 10 books? I think it's 10 books. I read all 10 books in probably like under a month. It was like a fever dream. I would literally stay up all night reading just to finish the books, and I was not able to put them down. I would immediately go to the next one. I don't know. That world just sucked me in, and I loved all the characters. And honestly, I have been chasing that feeling with romance books ever since. So then last year I read the Like Us series books, which, if you're not familiar, it's by the same author, and it is the like second generation series to the Addicted Calloway books. So it's about their children, which that series is now up to 13 books as well. So anyways, now that it's been about a year and a half since I read those books, I decided that I wanted to read them again and see if I still felt the same way. But this time I'm kind of taking it slower. I want to actually enjoy what I'm reading and kind of pay more attention, not just fly through them all. So I read the first 3 Addicted books at the end of last year, and then Kiss the Sky, which is the first Calloway book, which follows Rose Calloway and Connor Cobalt. That was my first book for this year from that series. If you know nothing about this series, I don't even know how to explain it. Basically, it's like the Addicted series follows Lily and Lo, who are both addicts, and they are trying to overcome their addictions, but they are also kids of very wealthy, notable parents, so they are kind of in the spotlight a lot. And then on top of that series, they did the Calloway Sisters series, which follows Lily's sisters, Rose and Daisy. The 2 series kind of overlap, and I do recommend that you read them that way. So the Addicted Calloway series together kind of follows Lily and her sisters and their journeys of coming into the spotlight and how they handle that scrutiny. And yeah, I think it's just a very interesting thing to read about. A lot of it is very over-dramatized, but that kind of is what makes it fun. It's got a really big found family aspect to it. Lily and Lo are childhood friends to lovers. Connor and Rose are academic rivals to lovers. And Daisy and Reich kind of have a little bit of a forbidden romance / age gap romance, I guess. Since this is a reread, I did not rate it again like I didn't for Crescent City. However, when I first read this book, I believe I gave it 5 stars. I love Lily and Lo. They might be my favorite couple, but Connor and Rose are right up there with them, and I think Connor Cobalt may be one of my favorite characters ever written, ever. The series does deal with a lot of very heavy themes though, so look up trigger warnings. But yeah, I do recommend this series, and I'm sure you'll see more books from both this series and the Like Us series, which they are just about to finish at the end of January. So I'm sure those will be in later videos as well. Here is how this is looking so far, and I will keep going and then show you when I am done with my 2 rows. Here is the next rows done, and we'll see what book I finish next. Today's January 30th. Actually, today is January 31st, so I am going to finish up my last few rows for this blanket because I did finish 2 books over the weekend and earlier this week. So last that I left off was with my white with the contemporary romance for Kiss the Sky. And both of these next 2 books are fantasy books. So we have Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath, and A Court of Silver Flames. Both of these were rereads leading up to Crescent City, House of Flame and Shadow, which came out yesterday. So I'm currently reading that one, so that will be in my February video. But I finished these, so let's add the rows in for these 2. These are very big books, and I know for the last Crescent City book that I read, which was House of Earth and Blood, I did 3 rows. That was this light pink in the center there. So I will probably be doing 3 rows for each of these as well, which will be 6 rows in total. So the first book that I finished was A Court of Silver Flames. This is the 4th book in the ACOTAR series, technically the 5th if you're counting Frost and Starlight, which was kind of a novella. This book was 751 pages. So I'll probably do 3 rows for this one. Back to our key. This is another fantasy book, so we are going to be using our blush color again, which is right here. I actually just got like 3 more skeins of this in the mail, thankfully, because I might run out of this today. So we're gonna have a little chunk of light pink coming up here, and then hopefully we get some other colors going in here. Obviously I am reading House of Flame and Shadow right now, so that'll be another fantasy book, but I'm also reading Nobody Like Us by Krista and Becca Ritchie, which is the final book in the Like Us series. That one is a contemporary, so that will also be white eventually. But both of those books are like 800, 900 pages long, so there is the potential for some other books to be finished in between there. I'm going to reattach my fantasy yarn, and then I will talk about this book for a bit. So if you are not familiar with the A Court of Thorns and Roses books, the first 3.5 books are written in the first person from Feyre's point of view. Feyre is the main character. So these are fantasy books. I believe the first one, A Court of Thorns and Roses, is like loosely a Sleeping Beauty retelling. Feyre is a human and she lives in the human realm, and the humans and the fairies, the Fae, High Fae, do not get along. Something happens and Feyre is forced to move into the fairy realm, but she finds out that there is a curse upon the fairy land, which is called Prythian, and it's up to the human Feyre to kind of save all of these fairies and their whole world. I will say that was probably a horrible way of describing it. If you are reading this series and you start with the first book and you find yourself kind of struggling to get through it, I recommend pushing through and trying to get to the second book. The second book is A Court of Mist and Fury, which is widely known as like the best book in the series. It is a lot of people's favorites. A Court of Thorns and Roses is still really good, but I kind of didn't understand the hype behind the whole series until I got to Mist and Fury. And I first read these books like years ago. I haven't done a full ACOTAR reread in a while. I probably should do that this year. So the first 3 books and the novella, so A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Frost and Starlight, all follow Feyre, and they're in Feyre's point of view. And then A Court of Silver Flames actually is about Feyre's sister Nesta, and it's in third person, so it's a bit different from the ACOTAR books. I'm not gonna lie, before reading A Court of Silver Flames, I really did not like Nesta. She's still not my favorite character. I like her a lot more now. I will say that book did Definitely give her a bit of a redemption arc, but she's still not my favorite. So I think when I originally read this book, when it came out, which I think was in 2021, I could be wrong about that though. I read it when it first came out, and I think I gave it 4 stars. Maybe it was 3.75 if I'm being honest. I really love Asriel though, so I did enjoy those little scenes with Cassian and Asriel, and I also really enjoyed Gwen, who's a new character in this, that got introduced in this book. Gwen and Emery and Nesta, I liked their friendship, and I liked the whole Valkyrie part of it. But yeah, so this was a reread. I'm not really like changing my rating on it or anything. I let that stand because that is how I felt when I first read it. But I will say I did enjoy it more this time around than I did last time. So I'm gonna finish these 3 rows, and then I will show you what it looks like, and then we'll talk about Crescent City too. All right, I finished my 3 rows for A Court of Silver Flames. So there are those. And now we have to do our 3 for Crescent City. The last book that I read in January was Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath. This is the 2nd book in the Crescent City series. The 3rd one just came out yesterday, which I am currently reading. So I read this to refresh my memory on how it ended and where everything left off before the 3rd book came out. This book came out, I believe, in 2022. That's when I first read it. When I first read House of Sky and Breath, I gave it 5 stars. I stand by that. If you have read this book, you know that the ending deserves 5 stars all on its own. So that's where that stands. This book is 800 pages. Exactly, I think it's 801. So I'm probably just gonna do 3 rows again, and then hopefully my next book is in a different genre so we can get some color variation going. This is obviously still a fantasy book, so we are still using our light pink yarn. I'm about to run out though, so I might have to add in a new yarn after the 1st or 2nd row. Again, this is what it looks like. So we've got some variation in the pattern going. And yeah, I'm excited to see how this works up when I get more colors going in it. Crescent City, House of Sky and Breath picks up where Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood kind of leaves off. There's like maybe a little bit of a time jump. I don't want to give too much away, but basically Bryce and Hunt are trying to return to normal life after the events of the 1st book. And of course something comes along to kind of mess with their lives. So you get more of the mystery aspect of it. I did mostly listen to this one on audiobook. I kind of went back and forth between reading and doing the audiobook. For some reason, the Crescent City books are just so much better on audiobook. I don't know if it's because of the narrator. The narrator is Elizabeth Evans, and I think she just does a perfect job of narrating these books. All of the voices that she gives to the characters are amazing, and I think she also does the Throne of Glass books, which are also Sarah J. Maas. I'll come back when I've finished my next couple rows, and then I will see you in February for the next month wrap-up of books. Let me know if you would like a separate video about my February TBR, what I'm planning on reading. I usually don't make very set TBRs. I kind of just jump around, and again, I'm a mood reader, so kind of whatever I'm in the mood for. I do DNF a lot of books. Like if I'm not having a good time, I'm not enjoying it, I will just stop even if I'm 95% of the way in. So I don't know if I'm gonna be making TBR videos because I probably won't stick to them, but I mean, right now I am currently reading a few books, so I can talk about those. And ones that I'm hopefully going to try to read, but yeah, I don't know. I will update you when I have finished my 3 rows. So here is what my blanket looks like after all of my rows for Crescent City House of Sky and Breath. I actually ended up only doing 5 rows total for both A Court of Silver Flames and House of Sky and Breath because most of these rows were double crochets, so it just was getting pretty thick, and I thought that that felt like a good place for it to leave off. So here is my blanket currently. I'm actually really happy with how this is looking. And I'm already starting to think about different genres of books that I am reading so I can start getting some of these other colors in on my blanket. But I'm really happy with how this looks. So we have this dark pink for YA romance, which was Dungeons and Drama by Kristy Boyce. And then this section of light pink was fantasy, which was for Crescent City House of Earth and Blood. Then we had this white row for contemporary romance, which was for Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. And then we had this first section of pink for fantasy, which was for A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. And then this last section of pink was also fantasy for Crescent City House of Sky and Breath, also by Sarah J. Maas. So I read 5 books in the month of January, and here is how my blanket looks. Come back early March to see what books that I read in February and how my blanket is looking after our 2nd month. As always, thank you for watching, like this video, and subscribe so that you are notified when my next monthly wrap-up video comes out, which will probably be early March. And I will also have the pattern that I am following for this linked in the description down below. All of my socials are also linked down below in case you want to follow along there. I am giving more regular updates of my blanket there. Comment some book recommendations, and let me know what book you're currently reading right now. Thanks for watching!